This message is for seniors, and it's coming from a senior. Today we're going to have a conversation around hurricane preparedness. It's important during this hurricane season that we prepare our homes for the season. So if your roof needs straps, now is the time to do that. If you recognize that there's some loose galvanized sheets, now is the time to fix those sheets. If you recognize that the water, you need containers to store water. If we recognize that our properties cannot withstand the winds, identify the closest shelter to you and share that information with a neighbor, share it with a family member, but don't just pick up and go to the shelter. Let somebody know exactly where you're going. Our first assignment as we speak today, we need to pack our emergency kit. In addition to the food and the water that we will take, what's very, very important is our medication, because most of us are on some kind of medication. So it's important that you take your medication with you, and also your personal documents in plastic. You put them in some Ziploc bags, so you walk with a passport. You make sure you have your ID card. Make sure you have your ATM card. We need to make sure we have a torch, and we have extra batteries. We need, if we are wearing, if you need feminine hygiene, or if seniors, you're wearing the diapers, you need to pack those as well. And in this emergency kit that you're packing, you don't go in there for anything at all. Put the little alcohol, put the smelling salts, put the Panadols, food stuff like the canned tuna, and you know that you're not going in there. And of course your medication will be in there. And equally important, if you like to read, or if you like to do Scrabble, or if you like to fix puzzles, put some form of recreation in that emergency kit as well. Because you're not going to be just sitting down listening to the wind howl. You need to engage your mind and to take it away from what's happening on the outside. You need to get into a mode of preparedness, and it must start now. As I speak, we must prepare today, because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Hi, I'm Ashley Leach. I have a disability, cannot walk. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready? First, you should make your house safe. Check the windows, the roof, check around the trees. Make sure they're cut properly. Strong wind blows, it doesn't fall on your house. Let's talk about the shelters. Make sure that wheelchair accessible, and make sure they have a ramp, and make sure you have someone or to accompany you up to the ramp. Let's start with emergency kits. So you guys can put like clothes, food, water, medication, even band-aids, batteries to keep for the news, and most of all, you need a flashlight just in case the current goes off that you can see around the house. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready?
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Today we will learn about hurricane alerts. Are you ready? I am Samalka Jackman, the Senior Meteorologist at the Barbados Meteorological Services, also known as the Met Office. So at the Met Office, we use 4 colors to just tell you what to do. Very simple. Green, no action. Yellow,
be aware.
Orange,
Be prepared.
and red,
Take action.
ask your mommy if she has a hurricane preparedness kit at home. Does it have in a flashlight? Does it have a battery operated radio? Does it have a first aid kit? Be prepared. Hurricane season is here. Together, we are better prepared.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th annually, but it's never too early to be prepared. We want to remind you that preparation is key to resiliency and safety for your homes and families. Prepare your home. Bad weather can strike at any time. Complete the necessary home repairs as early as possible. Store adequate food and water for your family and pets, and replenish your emergency kit. Create a plan. Make sure your family knows what to do in case of emergency, like shutting off utilities and the nearest emergency shelter. Be prepared for an emergency. Know your evacuation routes and listen to official media sources only. You can also download the DEM Shelter booklet to get updated information on shelters and contact information. Furthermore, you can download the cap.cap app and the BMS Insight app for all of your weather updates. A tropical system can develop very quickly, so make sure you are prepared. Don't be caught off guard this hurricane season. Early warning, early action saves lives.
Hi, I'm Astra. An emergency kit is a critical part of any hurricane preparedness plan. What should you have in this kit? Here are some of the items you should have: flashlights or lanterns, batteries, non-perishable food items, bottled water, a multi-purpose toolkit, first aid kit and medication, important documents, pet supplies, cash and credit cards, extra clothing, cell phone, and a portable radio.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management and the United States Agency for International Development.
This message is for seniors, and it's coming from a senior. Today we're going to have a conversation around hurricane preparedness. Important during this hurricane season that we prepare our homes for the season. So if your roof needs straps, now is the time to do that. If you recognize that there's some loose galvanized sheets, now is the time to fix those sheets. If you recognize that the water, you need containers to store water. If we recognize that our properties cannot withstand the winds, identify the closest shelter to you and share that information with a neighbor, share it with a family member, but don't just pick up and go to the shelter. Let somebody know exactly where you're going. Our first assignment as we speak today, we need to pack our emergency kit. In addition to the food and the water that we will take, what's very, very important is our medication, because most of us are on some kind of medication. So it's important that you take your medication with you, and also your personal documents in plastic. You put them in some Ziploc bags, so you walk with a passport. You make sure you have your ID card. Make sure you have your ATM card. We need to make sure we have a torch, and we have extra batteries. We need, if we are wearing, if you need feminine hygiene, or if seniors, you're wearing the diapers, you need to pack those as well. And in this emergency kit that you're packing, you don't go in there for anything at all. Put the little alcohol, put the smelling salts, put the Panadols, food stuff like the canned tuna, and you know that you're not going in there. And of course your medication will be in there. And equally important, if you like to read, or if you like to do Scrabble, or if you like to fix puzzles, put some form of recreation in that emergency kit as well. Because you're not going to be just sitting down listening to the wind howl. You need to engage your mind and to take it away from what's happening on the outside. You need to get into a mode of preparedness, and it must start now. As I speak, we must prepare today, because we don't know what tomorrow brings.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Wind rips all the tiles off your roof. Rain comes in the windows and floods your house. The foundation gets cracked. The pipes explode. There's an earthquake or a hurricane. Or maybe lightning strikes your antenna. A tree falls through the kitchen ceiling. It turns out Godzilla is real and he shows up in your neighborhood. You forget to turn off the stove. 10 reasons to get home insurance? 10% off when you do. Right now, Sagicor Life customers can save 10% on their home insurance policy. Visit SagicorGeneral.com or contact your Sagicor advisor today. Sagicor General. Wise financial thinking for life.
Hi, I'm Ashley Leach. I have a disability, cannot walk. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready? First, you should make your house safe. Check the windows, the roof, check around the trees. Make sure they're cut properly. Strong wind blows, it doesn't fall on your house. Let's talk about the shelters. Make sure they're wheelchair accessible and make sure they have a ramp and make sure you have someone or to accompany you up to the ramp. Let's start with emergency kits. So you guys can put like clothes, food, water, medication, even band-aids, batteries to keep for the news, and most important of all, you need a flashlight just in case the current goes off that you can see around the house. Hurricane season is here. Are you ready?
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Today we will learn about hurricane alerts. Are you ready? I am Samalka Jackman, the Senior Meteorologist at the Barbados Meteorological Services, also known as the Met Office. So at the Met Office, we use 4 colors to just tell you what to do. Very simple. Green, no action. Yellow,
Be aware.
orange,
Be prepared.
and red.
Take action.
Ask your mommy if she has a hurricane preparedness kit at home. Does it have in a flashlight? Does it have a battery operated radio? Does it have a first aid kit? Be prepared. Hurricane season is here. Together, we are better prepared.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th annually, but it's never too early to be prepared. We want to remind you that preparation is key to resiliency and safety for your homes and families. Prepare your home. Bad weather can strike at any time. Complete the necessary home repairs as early as possible. Store adequate food and water for your family and pets, and replenish your emergency kit. Create a plan. Make sure your family knows what to do in case of emergency, like shutting off utilities and the nearest emergency shelter. Be prepared for an emergency. Know your evacuation routes and listen to official media sources only. You can also download the DEM Shelter booklet to get updated information on shelters and contact information. Furthermore, you can download the cap.cap app and the BMS Insight app for all of your weather updates. A tropical system can develop very quickly, so make sure you are prepared. Don't be caught off guard this hurricane season. Early warning, early action saves lives.
Hi, I'm Astra. An emergency kit is a critical part of any hurricane preparedness plan. What should you have in this kit? Here are some of the items you should have. Flashlights or lanterns, batteries, non-perishable food items, bottled water, a multi-purpose toolkit, first aid kit and medication, important documents, pet supplies, cash and credit cards, extra clothing, cell phone, and a portable radio.
This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management and the United States Agency for International Development.
Wind rips all the tiles off your roof. Rain comes in the windows and floods your house. The foundation gets cracked. Pipes explode. There's an earthquake or a hurricane. Or maybe lightning strikes your antenna. A tree falls through the kitchen ceiling. It turns out Godzilla is real and he shows up in your neighborhood. You forget to turn off the stove. 10 reasons to get home insurance? 10% off when you do. Right now, Sagicor Life customers can save 10% on their home insurance policy. Visit SagicorGeneral.com or contact your Sagicor advisor today. Sagicor General. Wise financial thinking for life.
This message is for seniors, and it's coming from a senior. Today we're going to have a conversation around hurricane preparedness. Important during this hurricane season that we prepare our homes for the season. So if your roof needs straps, now is the time to do that. If you recognize that there's some loose galvanized sheets, now is the time to fix those sheets. If you recognize that the water, you need containers to store water. If we recognize that our properties cannot withstand the winds, identify the closest shelter to you and share that information with a neighbor, share it with a family member, but don't just pick up and go to the shelter. Let somebody know exactly where you're going. Our first assignment as we speak today, we need to pack our emergency kit. In addition to the food and the water that we will take, what's very, very important is our medication, because most of us are on some kind of medication. So it's important that you take your medication with you, and also your personal documents in plastic. You put them in some Ziploc bags, so you walk with a passport, you make sure you have your ID card, make sure you have your ATM card. We need to make sure we have a torch, and we have extra batteries. We need, if we are wearing, if you need feminine hygiene, or if seniors, you're wearing the diapers, you need to pack those as well. And in this emergency kit that you're packing, you don't go in there for anything at all. Put the little alcohol, put the smelling salts, put the Panadols, food stuff like the canned tuna, and you know that you're not going in there. And of course your medication will be in there. And equally important, if you like to read, or if you like to do Scrabble, or if you like to fix puzzles, put some form of recreation in that emergency kit as well. Because you're not going to be just sitting down listening to the wind howl. You need to engage your mind and to take it away from what's happening on the outside. You need to get into a mode of preparedness, and it must start now. As I speak, we must prepare today.
Listen carefully to our safety briefing and housekeeping messages. In the event of an emergency, staff of the department will direct you through the emergency exits to the emergency assembly points to the outside. Persons are encouraged to follow the guidance of staff members in the interest of their own safety. To find our bathrooms, persons may go through the white door inside the conference room through the next white door. Gents, your bathrooms is straight ahead, while ladies, you will make a slight turn to the right to find your bathroom. We do wish you a safe and productive meeting here at the Department of Emergency Management. Thank you.
Director of the Barbados Met Services, Mr. Sabu Bess, Manager of Direct Sales and Support Services, Stagicor, Mrs. Donnell Belgrave Young, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good morning. Practice makes improvement. Oftentimes we tend to seek perfection, which continues to elude us. Our National Emergency Management System is not perfect, but it continues to improve as we collectively work to prepare our nation for yet another Atlantic hurricane season. Let me hasten to say that we have never stopped planning and that we continue with absolute necessity and purpose to prepare our systems, plans, procedures, and people. Over the past few months, amidst all other events on the national calendar, the emergency services personnel, agencies and ministry personnel, volunteers, shelter management personnel, all who have a critical role to play have been reviewing and updating plans, going through various scenarios, anticipating challenges, and working through plausible solutions to those challenges, repairing, upgrading, and procuring equipment to supplement our existing resources that are pressed into service when there is an emergency. As the Department of Emergency Management and other critical stakeholders in the national system sit constantly and consistently working to ensure that all systems are ready, it is apparently clear that national readiness is a shared responsibility and one that requires unity of effort. In critically examining our system, we note the significant advancement in our hazard detection, monitoring, and analysis, which has led to improvements in the forecast and speed at which warning messages are received by the public. As it relates to improving our disaster risk knowledge, we continue to collect valuable data and information, conduct vulnerability and risk assessments, endeavoring to understand the vulnerabilities about how hydromet hazards can affect us. That is people, property, and systems. You may have or will continue to see agency personnel, such as those from the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs, the Barbados Statistical Service, and the District Emergency Volunteers, collect in the field, collecting invaluable information from you, the public. We need your cooperation in this exercise. In relation to dissemination and communication of emergency information and warnings, we take this opportunity to highlight the standing agreements we have with all our broadcast entities nationally to communicate warnings and associate information to you, the public, and the at-risk population in order for you to make decisions about you and your family's situation and our safety. Our media partners have assured us that they will continue to provide the necessary coverage and communicate clear and accurate information to the public. Partner agencies such as the Ministry of Information Smart Technology, specifically the Telecommunications Unit, the Barbados Police Service, the Barbados Defense Force, the Barbados Fire Service, the Barbados Citizen Band Association, and others continue to work with the Department of Emergency Management and other stakeholders to facilitate communication across our emergency telecommunications network. As it relates to preparedness and response, I alluded to earlier the plans we are continually attending to at the national and agency levels. My only ask of you at this time is that you create and practice your family disaster preparedness plans, know your nearest emergency shelter, plan your evacuation routes, stock up on non-perishable emergency supplies, and clean around your homes. All that I have spoken to requires coordination. Rest assured that the Department of Emergency Management leads the community and national coordination efforts and supports coordination efforts at the regional level as required. I take this opportunity to highlight our ongoing relationship with various private sector agencies, and I thank the Stagicor and the Barbados Light and Power for being here with us today. These entities who contribute resources and expertise to the system as well. Our close relationship with the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and other regional and international partners who choose to assist Barbados with additional surge capacity and emergency resources as the situation dictates. The partnerships are truly appreciated. The National Emergency Management System has proven to be effective, potentially saving lives once we actively play our part. We need you, the public, to actively support this endeavor. Help us help you. Volunteer with the District Emergency Organization. Prepare your personal, family, business, and community spaces. Heed the warnings and stay informed. Assist the vulnerable and at risk among us. Support our public awareness events, which we will be embarking on with our many partners, some of whom are here with us today. Find time to engage with the Department of Emergency Management staff and the DO volunteers within the various communities, taking stock of the invaluable preparedness information and tips. Continue to prepare for our changing climate. I thank you.
Thank you, Director Hanks. And one of the key points she mentioned was beyond that coordinated approach in order to make things happen when it comes to emergency management. I want to take a moment just to recognize all of the agencies here today. You're all valued partners to the department. You contribute to us, to our success, to our work program in one way or another, and I want to thank you all for being here this morning. One such partner is Sagicor. I now invite the Manager of Sales and Direct Support Services, Mrs. Donella Belvedere, to deliver her remarks.
Thank you. Protocol being observed. Good morning, everyone. Let me start by thanking you all for being here today, and whether in person or online, as we get set to start the official 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. Your presence here is just not appreciated, but it's very important. At Sagicor, we know what we represent when it comes to emergency and risk management, and we take it very seriously. Over the past few years, we've watched hurricane seasons unfold with increasing intensity. We've seen storms that form earlier, faster, and travel farther, and hit harder. They left behind not only damage to property, but deep emotional scars in our communities. We've heard the stories from families who've lost everything in a matter of hours to small businesses whose livelihoods these disasters place on our emergency services, our infrastructure, and our governments. But above all, we've seen the pressure they place on people, and in turn, all of us. And we do see this a lot in our claims experience. That's why today, it is not just about forecasting a number of named storms for us. It's about how we prepare. It's about how we protect, and more than ever, it's about how we recover. This is where insurance plays a vital part, not as a last resort, but as a first line of the financial defense. We need to shift the narrative. And you did that today, Carrie. Everybody needs to play a part. We reached out to the General Insurance Association of Barbados just to get an understanding of the numbers that we face in the industry, and approximately $16 million in claims were following the Hurricane Elsa in 2021. Last year we had Hurricane Beryl, and we don't have those numbers yet, but we are expecting the numbers to be just as high and we are still being updated today. Of key importance, these numbers do not include the uninsured or the economic losses the country experienced. These numbers underscore immense social and economic strain that it places on our country. At Sagicor, we believe that insurance is a cornerstone of resilience. When disaster strikes, the right coverage means families can start to rebuild not just their homes, but hope. It means businesses can reopen and employees can return to work. Communities can get back up faster. But we know that insurance can be a little complicated. We've heard it. And it is hard for some people to reach out to ask these questions. That's why we are very committed to providing coverage and clarity to educate the public and joining with such services as the Disaster Emergency Management Team to make sure that that clarity is clear. We don't take this responsibility that this insurance company, Sagicor General, has. And we've enhanced our disaster planning and business recovery processes to ensure that even in the event of a disaster, our response is swift and our support is very strong. We can't control nature, but we can control how we prepare for it. And preparation is just not the responsibility of the emergency management agencies or insurance companies. It is our shared responsibility. So, as we begin this season, let's do so with a spirit of awareness, readiness, and unity. Let's protect ourselves, our loved ones, and our community, not just physically, but financially. Let's ensure that, come what may, we are in a position not to survive, but to recover, rebuild, and thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Basically, to start off, before we talk into the prognosis, what we expect 2025, it's always good to have a look back at what happened in the past so we can appreciate the changes that we've actually been witnessing. It's really important because then we can fully grasp, understand what we're faced with potentially, not just this year and even years to come. And so I'm going to give you a general overview of what we're going to have discussion here today. We're going to talk about the 2024 season recap, statistics, and obviously Hurricane Beryl. That was major for us last year. And then we're going to jump right into the 2025 hurricane season prognosis. Then I have a quick look at the 2025 names and the supplemental list. I want to go over the rainfall outlooks or the preparedness at this point. If there are any questions after, we can discuss that. But we're really going to home in on the tropical cyclones, hurricane storms, basically, that pose a threat to us, increasing threat, I should say. So, 2024 season recap. The 2024 hurricane season was extremely destructive. The third most costly on record. We had 18 named storms. 11 of them developed into hurricanes, and 5 of them into major. 11 of those hurricanes developed. 5 of those 11 hurricanes developed into major hurricanes. And 6 of those storms underwent rapid intensification. And you can remember Beryl was one of them. This is actually the highest number of rapid intensifying storms during the season on record. And although I don't have it listed here in this presentation, Beryl is also the strongest hurricane so early in the season to affect this part of the world. And lastly, 2024 was a backloaded season with unusually quiet period from mid-July to mid-September. And there's a reason why I have that in this presentation, because sometimes we say that season is going to be really active, you may have these quiet periods. Don't let your guard down. Don't. Thomas was a late season. Beryl and Elsa was very early. We got mid-season quietness. Doesn't mean it's going to be that way every year. Don't let your guard down. So, Beryl in 2020, last year, passed around 200 kilometers to our south of our island. 200 kilometers, that's fairly far, relatively speaking. But it was a powerful hurricane, powerful. As you can see from the radar imagery that we have on the screen there, we were lucky. Not so for our friends and colleagues down in the island chain, but we were lucky. That's a very powerful hurricane. And we saw the impacts that we had here on the ground. And those of you who can remember, who were here and remember, it's really important that you remember this going into 2025 and 40 years and to share your experiences because it's going to be very important. Next slide, before we go into prognosis, it's important to understand what we've been witnessing over the past few years. Because you hear in the media a lot that we are seeing more and more storms, more intense storms. But I need to relay that to you, the proof that that's actually what's been happening. I just mentioned that last year was highest year record that we've seen so many rapidly intensifying storms. That means the fuel is there. The energy is there. We are seeing them be developing early in the season, which means the ingredients are right. The season is coming in early. It's ready. And so we got to be ready from early. And so what we have on the screen there is basically the forecast storms for the last 10 years, from 2014 to 2024, from a number of agencies that we follow yearly, which is Colorado State University, NOAA, etc. And the red line you see on the graph there is what actually occurred. So it's important to understand what's forecasted, and it's important to understand what actually happened, see how good the forecasts are. But just two things I want you to notice from this graph. You don't have to go into all the technicality here. Just have a look at the graph from left to right. The last 10 years, you can see those buildings, if you like, getting taller as we get to 2024. In other words, predictions, the seasons, year after year, the predictions are increasing. Just take that away from this presentation. The red line shows you how pretty good the forecast is. That's actually what I've observed. Apart from 2020, which was an incredible year, I can tell you, it's been pretty much spot on in terms of the forecast. Pretty good. Let's have a look at what was forecasted for hurricanes. Again, from left to right, you can see that generally increase in the forecast. From left to right. That's what we're seeing year after year. So I'm showing you, I'm showing you over the past 10 years, especially, very recent history, memory, what's actually been happening in our entire Atlantic basin. We're seeing an increased number in forecasts, now we're seeing an increased number in occurrences actually happening. So the occurrences are matching the forecasts. Major hurricanes, again, look at the building blocks. This is really important, these major hurricanes. These ones that really flatten places, cause a lot of destruction, disrupt lives and livelihoods. This is really important. 2014, 2015, very small buildings. Have a look at the last 5 years. Last 5 years, it's really incredible. This is really serious. Very serious. So this next graph is really important to us. It's homes in on Barbados. I just show you from an entire Atlantic basin perspective. But let's talk about Barbados. And again, for those of you not really technically savvy, I'll be really basic here to explain the really important points of these three-line graphs. The red line graph, the red line is basically tropical cyclone centers that pass within 150 kilometers of Barbados with 30-year periods since records began back in 1855. The blue one is within 100 kilometers. And the yellow one is within 50 kilometers. Folks, I want you to look at the yellow one. Just focus on that one far right of this chart. And you see that big uptick from 1995 to 2024. Last 30 years. Jumped at 7. And since records began, we've never had so many tropical cyclones passing within 50 kilometers of Barbados. That alone is a record too. And that should resonate and stand out to all of us. Folks, in summary, they're coming closer and closer. Not just closer, more frequently. It's a fact. The figures are here. they're coming closer. So let's having understood what's happened in the past and the trends. That's important before we get into forecast, which we do now. So 2025. The number of agencies we look at each year, this is not the first time we're having this conversation, from forecasts from Colorado State University, Tropical Storm Risk, and University of Arizona, and even NOAA. It's not the first time. But I'll explain this in simple terms again. All of the agencies essentially predicting an above average hurricane season once again, full stop. On average, we're speaking of from 1991 to 2020, that's climatological average, we normally have 14 EM storms in the entire Atlantic basin, 7 of which become hurricane and 3 of which become major hurricanes. Just to recap, 2024 we had 18, 11 of which became hurricanes and 5 major. That was above average, full stop right across the board. And this year, 2025, the predictions ranging from 13 right up to 19 if you consider all of the centers. And 6 to 10 for hurricanes and major hurricanes, 3 up to 5. Essentially, full stop, above average season. Above average season, again. But let's drill again further down into home. And home, I meaning in the Atlantic east of Barbados, where these tropical cyclones develop, and few of them come towards Barbados, even Eastern Caribbean. So let's have a look at that to understand from our predictions what we may be looking at face stuff here. What I showed you in the previous slide is the entire Atlantic basin, which includes the Atlantic east of us, the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and way farther north. But what about us? What about what's potentially going to trouble us? So last year we ran our first model for prediction, tropical cyclones. And so our 2024 prediction from Barbados Met Services, tropical storms, we predicted 7, 4 of which become hurricane, and 2 of which should become major hurricanes. The actual season, like I said before, in this basin area, as you can see from the shaded gray box, including Barbados all the way to west coast of Africa, produced 6 tropical storms, 3 of which became hurricane, and 2 became major hurricanes. I'm showing this to show how pretty good our first prediction was last year. It was really, really good. It wasn't good that it was above average like that, and obviously we were impacted. The point is, I want you to see, the work we're doing to improve our prediction into the future, what impacts we may be looking at, because it helps us to understand the gravity of the situation within our area, not just the entire Atlantic, but in our area. I should mention for just this corridor that I have there, from Barbados all the way to Africa, the average tropical storms that you should see in that area is 5. The average for hurricanes is 2, and the average for major hurricanes is 1. So just for that area alone, it's above average. Just that area. So understanding our first crack at it in 2024, we're having another crack at it in 2025 in terms of the prediction within this area. And so for 2025, the BMS predicting within this main development area from the west coast of Africa, including the Barbados, Eastern Caribbean, 7 tropical storms, 3 of which become hurricane, and 1 of those hurricanes should become a major hurricane. We remind you the averages again: 5 storms, 2 hurricanes, 1 major for just that area. Our prediction is 7, 3, and 1. Essentially above average again. Intense hurricane seasons is becoming a reality and a repeat event year after year. Year after year. Now, I'm not going to go into names. I mentioned this widely available, but people have been asking why we having these increase in tropical cyclones in rapid intensification and so many of them. There are a number of factors, not just one thing, the number. But two main factors for this year, 2025, let's talk about 2025. We are in a neutral state of the El Nino, or the ENSO. It's currently in neutral. It's not La Nina full blown. When neutral is still considered still fairly active. We would rather go to El Nino, for tropical cyclones, we tend to be on the downside, but also that has impacts on our rainfall too. But in summary, neutral is still fairly conducive for tropical cyclone development. And then most importantly, I think, is the above normal sea surface temperatures. We all witnessed in 2023 record-breaking temperatures. 2023, we broke our record for highest temperature ever recorded in Barbados. 2023. Some really warm sea surface temperatures. 2024 is warm as well. This year doesn't look so bad compared to the last 2 years, but it's still above average. It's still considerably warmer than what it usually is. So there's energy there. The next slide shows you, this is just surface anomalies, the surface temperatures. It's just not here. It's just not unique to around Barbados, the Atlantic Basin. It's in a lot of places around the globe. It really highlights and shows the impacts of climate change. Sorry, the impacts these increasing sea surface temperatures is having on the climate, weather and climate. And we're starting to see these changes unfold before our eyes. I show you the graphs, I show you statistics. It is happening. It is happening today, now. That's essentially it. Obviously, I'll open to any questions, comments, and thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. As I prepared my notes for today, I was trying to not make anybody panic or alarm anybody. However, coming behind Sabu, I might as well have gone with the issue got it right. So, I want to begin my address today by highlighting the reality that currently faces us. Last year, we all thought that Hurricane Beryl came early in the season when it arrived on our shores on the night of June 30th in the early morning and into the early morning of July 1st. This year, as you've heard from Sabu, we have to heighten our guard. We're still in the month of May, and tropical waves have already began to roll across the Atlantic. These tropical waves are what sometimes develop into these dangerous storms, raging havoc across some countries and coastal communities. While this is not unusual, the reality is that climate change is having a huge impact on our weather patterns. No longer can we box the hurricane season into just 6 months of the year. We all know the rain, June too soon, July standby, August, something else. But anyway, and it ended in November. But as you might have realized by now, the government of Barbados has as its operational readiness date May 1st. So we've moved our aim date for preparation from the 1st of June to the 1st of May. And quite frankly, I think it was because we did that last year that we were able to respond as quickly as we did to Beryl, because everything was in place. But predicted impacts on our country may need to be revised given changes in the intensity and development patterns of the weather systems with which you are now faced. Hurricane Beryl last year was testimony to that. It was evidence that what we thought was a safe height for the boulders and dolos which form part of our coastal defense system and provide safe harbor to our fishing fleet against the surge against the storm surge that those had to be revised. Never in the history of Barbados has storm surge overwhelmed the outer wall of the Bridgetown port, such that 2 vessels sank in what we consider to be the safest harbor of all. Just to give you a perspective, after Beryl, when it was subsiding, we went down to the fisheries complex. As the all clear was given, we went on to the fisheries complex because we heard there was devastation down there. And even in the aftermath, we saw the waves rolling over our sea defense systems that up to that point in time had proved more than adequate against anything that ever hit Barbados. The waves came straight over and were smashing boats together. The image that I have that's burned into my mind is there was a lady standing on, she was a boat owner, and she was on the edge of the dock, and her boat was sinking, and she was trying to hold on to this boat with a rope. Right? That is the image that I take from last year as to how powerless we are against the elements. Any of you who've ever gone past the outer wall of the harbor, that wall is massive. It's massive. If you sail past that today and you look up, you will say to yourself, as was conceived when it was initially engineered, nothing will ever go over that wall. We were in the port, in the aftermath, and the waves rolled easily over the wall. We saw the waves breaking and rolling over, such that 2 boats sank in there. So we are now in uncharted waters, right? All of what we before held as adequate, we now have to revise all of that. And that applies not just to the government, but that applies to everybody else. For us here in Barbados, climate change is not just an academic global issue. It's our local lived reality that shapes the way we live, work, and plan for the future. We are faced with rising sea levels, increased intensity of storms, more intense heat, sargassum seaweed, and drought, all brought on by climate change. Every citizen of this country has a vested interest in what occurs. We have a responsibility to ensure that we are as prepared as possible for the season. What does it mean to prepare for changing climate? Preparing for changing climate means investing in stronger infrastructure and protecting natural defenses, both coastal and inland, reinforcing bridges against possible collapse in floods, and building homes that are more resilient. I assure you that the government is doing all within its power to better prepare for the changing climate as it seeks to reinforce its resilience to such shocks. We are seeking to build stronger coastal defenses, replanting mangroves, and upgrading our critical infrastructure. Through partnerships with regional and international institutions, we are redesigning our water systems, improving drainage, and making our agriculture more climate smart. Just a practical example of that, when the fisheries complex breakwater was initially designed, the blocks, the dolos, those are the things that look like jacks. Remember, as children, well, the ladies may more remember this than the fellas, but we watched the girls doing it. Those jacks that they thought at the time that 5-ton interlocking dolos was going to be sufficient. There was nothing at that time on record that would have moved those. And the fisheries complex in breakwater was constructed with those. Our reconstructed breakwater is now going to have 15-ton dolos, not 5 tons. 15-ton dolos, and you're going to have the big granite boulders that you all see out there when you drive around Spring Garden. Those are going to go in to form the core. So it is going to be higher and maybe 3 times as strong as the one that was destroyed. That is our reality. We can no longer look at what the average was, at what the historical was. We now have to plan and expand our mind to the contemplation of the greatest possible impact. Preparing for changing climate also means empowering our citizens through education. We cannot prepare for changing climate without the full participation of every Barbadian. From schools to community centers, we are investing in climate education, disaster preparedness, and green jobs training. Our fisherfolk, farmers, and tourism workers are receiving support to adapt their livelihoods and technologies, because adaptation is not just about infrastructure, it's about equity and opportunity. Children and adults also need to understand the science of climate change, how it impacts them, and what actions they should take. At this point, I must commend the Department of Emergency Management for its increased effort at public awareness and education of the population, not just the hurricanes, but also to the other multiple hazards, the various hazards, like tsunamis. We all have a role to play in ensuring that our friends, our families, our work colleagues are all sensitized to the potential threats, how they should prepare and respond to those events. Most importantly, preparing for changing climate means changing how we think. We can no longer separate development from sustainability. We can no longer build today without thinking about tomorrow. And we can no longer say it won't happen here, because it already has, and it will again. There's simple things that we can do, like retrofitting your existing homes with hurricane straps to keep the roof infrastructure intact. If it's a new build, make sure if you're building your house now, you spend a couple extra dollars to make it as hurricane resilient as it can be, because it will matter. In the old times saying, when the high winds come. If you travel around Barbados, why hurricane straps? People think that hurricane straps keep on the galvanize, keep on the roof. It doesn't do that. It keeps the superstructure of the roof intact. So the beams that you place the galvanize on, those are strapped down to the house. So that if even the galvanize peels off, you still have the supporting structure that you can quickly replace fresh galvanize with. If you don't have the hurricane strap, when the roof gone, everything goes. So you can't put on a tarp, you can't put on galvanize, and the house, actually, it compromises the integrity of the entire house. I learned all this from Elsa. And you may think to yourself that I don't want to spend money in putting on hurricane straps. The few dollars you spend in putting on hurricane straps might be nothing compared to the amount of money you lose by not putting them on. We also have a hurricane strap program. You can reach out to the Department of Emergency Management if you want for someone to inspect your house and see if we can actually retrofit your house. The bulk of the times it only works if the beams are exposed, right? But then we can advise you as to what to do as well. Don't let the fact that you don't necessarily have the money stop you from investigating the possibility, because we will help you where we can. It makes sense for us to help you now rather than having to try to find millions of dollars to do what we did for Elsa. So, in addition to the simple things you can do, keep your properties clear to minimize flooding. Report blocked drains, waterways, and wells. Just look around. If you know that this will cause a problem, then report it, and we will address it early o'clock. The things that are within your own property is your responsibility. Do what you can to make sure that your property is not under threat because of your inaction, or that your inaction does not threaten somebody else's property. The challenge is not just for government, it's for all of us. Residents, businesses, faith groups, educators, youth, and our regional and global partners. I now come to tackle the uncomfortable conversation on insurance. I am glad that Sagicor was here to present. Barbadians as a whole appear to not want to insure their properties. And there will be some who, because of their financial position, are not in a position to do it. So the government will always have to accommodate and look out for those persons in the case of a disaster. But for all the persons who have the capacity to insure their properties, I urge you, insure your properties. Following Beryl, almost, I think, over 90%, I was told the accurate figures, about 95% of all the boats impacted by the storm surge associated with Beryl were uninsured. 95%. After Elsa, the government of Barbados embarked upon perhaps the single largest social rescue program in the history of the government, in undertaking to repair and rebuild damaged and destroyed homes. Why? Because most of the affected housing stock was not insured. We are still reeling from the devastation and the cost of Elsa. The government did it at that time because there was no other option. It was not expected. People were caught by surprise. And the reality is, if the most vulnerable are affected, then the government has to step in to cover them and ensure that they can get back on their feet. Bailouts of the scale in Elsa and Beryl are unlikely to ever happen again. The government just cannot afford to do that again. Persons who can afford to must insure their assets, especially if that asset is how you earn your living. To not do so, you risk all at your own peril. It is perhaps one thing to not insure your house. When you don't insure your business, when you don't insure your boat that you depend on to make money and to feed your family, then you're playing with your future in circumstances that Sabu said are becoming increasingly more volatile, more powerful, and more frequent. I am sorry to adopt this tone in it, but it is important for people to know we have one chance to get it right. It does not make sense crying after the event if you could have done something about it. I know personally that I've taken steps to secure my property I had never done, in a way I had never done before, because I looked at what happened to others and I don't want that to happen to me. If you can afford to do it, there is no excuse for you to not take responsibility for making your property and your business as resilient as possible. As I said, and I don't want the message to be misunderstood, we accept there will always be the vulnerable persons who cannot do it, and then they fall to the responsibility of the government. But if you are in a financial position to do so and you fail to do so, that is now at you. We all have a role to play. We all have the power to act. Let us all join together to make Barbados as resilient as possible in preparing not just for this hurricane season, but also for all other hazards in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Abrams. And following on from the Minister's remarks, I just want to encourage us all present today to look at our homes and our offices to see what we can do, what small measures we can take to improve their resilience as we prepare for what a changing climate is likely to bring. I now invite, there's going to be a slight change in our program. We will both say one time to do the launch of the bus. So I want to invite members of the media at this time to ask any questions that you may have.
Yes.
Please start by indicating your name and the organization you're. Sorry.
Good morning, Rachel Agard, CBC. We've heard a lot of the steps that have been taken to shore up the coastline, shore up certain parts of the country. We've gotten all the advice to secure our personal property. We've heard Sabu's predictions for 2025. But essentially, how ready are we for this hurricane season?
So I would say we are as ready as we can be at this time. We've started our meetings early. Our hurricane preparedness meeting started probably in January or February, or dealing with the immediate departments who are responsible for emergency management, disaster management. We've had 2 full meetings of the big team, which brings together all departments responsible for disaster management. That would be police, BDF, health, QEH, DM, light and power, the 2 telecoms, all the utilities, fire service. You get the idea. Everybody that plays a part in disaster management, we had the full meetings where persons had to report on their own state of readiness. And their state of readiness includes such details down to, have you tested all your generators? Do you have generators for everything that requires generators? For the water pumping stations, do you have generators for each pumping station? Right? Do you have your emergency evacuation plans? Where you evacuating to? How many vehicles do we have in the whole of Barbados? How many Bobcats we have in government and then privately, how many excavators we have in government and then privately, how many trucks, how many, everything, down to the shutdown protocols. So I would say that every year it gets better, because over the last couple of years, the Prime Minister gave everybody a come to Jesus moment, maybe about 3-4 years ago. And she required a level of detail from all agencies that they had previously never had to deliver before. So that template has now been set. People know what they have to report on. The hospital has to report on how much stock it has, how much, if we were cut off, how much medication they have for all of the critical illnesses and whatnot, how long can that last. Agriculture has to advise how much food they have stockpiled, right? And then I want to big up as well the World Food Program. So you would have seen recently the World Food Program open its logistics hub, which is probably one of the largest warehouses in Barbados. And what that is intended to serve, that's intended to serve the Caribbean and Latin America, some parts of Latin America. We have the opportunity, it's right there in the precincts of the airport, so it has easy access to the runway. We can pre-position before the hurricane season all of the generators, tarps, all the bulky items that's hard to store. You can have those in a central location. The hub is designed to withstand, I think, up to Category 5, a middle Category 5 hurricane. And why is that important for us? Because it's in Barbados. So anything that affects the Caribbean, chances are it has to pass Barbados first. We're the most easterly. So anything affecting our neighbors has to pass us, and we can chase the storm from here. We can chase the storm in terms of relief supplies, in terms of relief delivery efforts and whatnot. If it was prepositioned, let's say in Jamaica, if a storm hit Barbados or Antigua, then Jamaica could not respond because the storm was still coming in their direction. So because of our geographical circumstances, we were lucky to have it positioned here, but that is a game changer for us. So each year we are doing more than we did the year before. And we're preparing better than the year before. Are we ever going to be properly prepared for Category 5 hurricane? No. No. The scale of destruction is unimaginable. But for all of the things we can control, we've been doing our best to deal with those, line those up before the start of the hurricane season. And it doesn't stop there. So through the hurricane season, we keep tweeting. We keep having the meetings to make sure that we know exactly where everybody is, right? We have to know about the shelters. We need to know if equipment is down, that the list that we got a month ago, if we can still rely on that list. So it's a moving target. And from the time a system comes up that appears to be threatening Barbados, the big team meets again. And we do go on a massive drain clearing, flushing of the drains in Bridgetown, clearing the waterways. Just before the storm, the sanitation collects all the garbage within 24 hours and all that sort of thing. So we are as prepared as we have ever been, but the preparation does not stop there. As a system comes, you then respond, you step it up to upgrade and respond based on the danger that is being presented to us. So am I comfortable that with our level of preparation, with the caveat that you can never be fully prepared for a hurricane, I believe we are more prepared now than we've ever been at this point in time.
Thank you. Emmanuel Joseph, Barbados Today. You talk about revision of the approach to your port defenses, and this is very important. So I want to find out how soon you will actually start this work and what the revision is going to look like, apart from the fact that you're going to have 15-ton dolos.
So the work has started. If you go to the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex, you will see that the work has started on the outer wall. So if you think of it as a triangle, the barrier is wider at the base and it gets narrower to the top, right? So the base has been increased. So you made that triangle bigger. So that means that any wave or wave energy has more to try to push at. Is it complete? No, it's not complete. Right? That was a massive undertaking. If you look at what was involved in rebuilding it, a lot of that equipment was not in Barbados. That was not here, it's not readily available. You don't stockpile that. I have been assured that within the next month or so, we should be at some position of usability, but it is not complete. It will not be completed before the start of the hurricane season, and it is a work that is going to go on for probably till at least the end of this year, right? But they are doing the best that they can in the interim, but we're also trying to make alternative plans in terms of safe harbors for boats. So we have to go into negotiations with the other places like Port St. Charles and Port Ferdinand for increased facility for them. We're also looking at how we position the boats. We are fine-tuning the system, so it's not going to be a free-for-all. As it stands now, when the advisory is being given for the boats to come into shore, you have everybody streaking coming down, going wherever they can go to, right? No. The director of the fisheries is coordinating to make sure everybody knows where to go to. These boats go here, and in what order, because you have to stack them now to ensure that we get the maximum utility. It's not the ideal situation, but we're doing the best we can in trying to undertake what is a massive engineering exercise.
What's the cost likely to be like?
I can't give you that figure off the top of my head.
Another question, you talked about the fact that these waves are getting higher and stronger, but yet we are continue to build hotels on coastal areas. How do you reconcile that in the light of the fact that you're expecting all these stronger and intense hurricanes?
I can't tell people where to build their hotels, right? And the reality is, if we get strong storm surge, it's going to come across, whether you're on the seaside, whether you're on the land side, it's going to come across, right? We live on a small island, and we have to use what we have. If you look, for example, at the Hilton was designed to withstand storm surge. How the Hilton was designed, that the water runs around, runs through. If you look at the courtyard where people have the receptions and things, you wonder why they didn't block it off. It was designed to actually allow water to pass through and cause minimal damage. I understand that the persons who are building on the seashore have to provide designs that show that they're contemplating where they're building and taking steps to mitigate any effects there. But that's the best I can give you on that one.
Good morning, everyone. Trey Grace from The Nation. I guess this might be a question for the DEM. I know government normally has a count of the number of vulnerable persons taking into account their homes. Can you give us an update on what that number is for this year?
We don't have exact numbers in terms of, I can't give you an exact number at this point in time. Vulnerability is a very fluid state. Persons may be vulnerable today, and we may have persons added to the list. But rest assured that with the assistance of the Ministry of People Empowerment and the district emergency organizations, we are undertaking an exercise where we are looking to ensure that we have an adequate field for the number of vulnerable persons out there. So the district emergency organization volunteers are sending in the information about the vulnerable persons in their communities, and there are other agencies of government who are doing so. We collate the list just to have a feel of the spatial feel of where these vulnerable persons are, and then of course that will feed in to our decision making if we need to go and collect persons to ensure that they're in a place, we can bring them to a place of safety and what's not. So it is an ongoing exercise, and hence the reason why earlier I indicated to persons, when you see persons going out there from the various agencies, from our district emergency organizations, please give them the information that they require. It is really to help you.
And then lastly from me, yesterday there was a major water outage and some schools were impacted. I think the question led to perhaps how ready some of these schools, which are also, I believe, hurricane shelters, how ready are they in the eventuality that we are significantly impacted?
As the population knows, we utilize schools and churches and other buildings, community buildings, as shelters, as emergency shelters. One of the prerequisites is to ensure that we have the emergency water supplies in place and emergency generation. You will see that the Category 1 shelters, they have emergency water, emergency generation. There are some schools, and when we go through our various audits, we may have to take them off the list because they need some additional works. This is an ongoing situation. The Ministry of Education, they have sought to, on a continuous basis, look to see where they can improve, and this is in addition to, in support of the various agencies to ensure that we have the proper facilities, emergency sheltering facilities. As I said, this is an ongoing situation. We are not at 100%, but we work assiduously to ensure that there are the relevant emergency sheltering for the population. We will have, on an ongoing business, we do have various technical or development projects where we may focus on specific schools and infrastructures. And it is not only just the physical infrastructure, but also in terms of developing the various plans and procedures, and also readying the school population that if indeed something happens while they're at school, they know what they're supposed to be doing.
Just 1 second before we go on. So Trey, to answer your question further, down to our planning, our readiness planning, there's provision for the refilling of tanks. So there's certain places that are priorities. So in the aftermath of a disaster, the Barbados Water Authority knows where it has to refill as a priority, and it deals with that accordingly. When somebody asks the exact same question you asked, if a school is in operation, a school has 1,000 people, that's 1,000 children at will, running the pipe, flushing the toilet, using the water as normal. If it is being used as a shelter, we will not have 1,000 people in it. So if the water goes off at a school 8 o'clock in the morning, then by 3 o'clock or 2:30, the tanks might be empty because the children don't even know the water's gone off. The tank kicks in and it does what it's supposed to do. If you're in an emergency situation, you will know fully well that you're rationing the water. You also will not have that volume of persons creating a normal usage situation, right? So the water in tanks will last longer, and there's provision to have them refilled as soon as the all clear is given.
The houses that were damaged or destroyed in Elsa have all been completely?
No, all have not been completed. The vast majority of them have been completed, but we've encountered some issues. The government cannot get into family business. So you have persons who are living in houses, and when the houses are destroyed and we attempted to repair or rebuild the houses, people came forward saying, that's not his house, it is my house. I always wanted him out, right? And no, I'm being dead serious. We butt that constantly. So there's dispute over title. We cannot intervene in there. So there's some persons who may be living in properties, the properties were damaged or destroyed, and they're still now being supported by government because we've been unable to fix their properties due to circumstances not necessarily within our control, but outside of our control. But I can tell you the vast majority of persons who were displaced during ELSA are back in accommodation. The recovery effort for that was nothing short of phenomenal. I must commend the Ministry of Housing and all the associated departments, UDC, RDC, everybody who had a part to play And that was a social intervention on a scale never before seen in Barbados or undertaken by any government before. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you very much, members of the media. I now invite Program Officer, Mr. Simon Ali, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we want to thank all of you for your participation here for making this press conference launch of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season a success. So first of all, let me say on behalf of the Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Ms. Carrie Hines, and the members of staff here, we want to thank all of you for making the effort and seeing this as being a very important event to attend. We are grateful for those persons who would have been tuned in online via our live stream. We hope that the information that they received was also clear and informative, and also the reassurances of the Minister of Home Affairs, as well as our Director and our corporate partner, Sagicor. We thank you for your assistance. So we would like to thank, first of all, the Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Wilfred Abrams, for his feature address this morning. We do know the minister is quite busy. I always say that we have probably one of the most hardworking ministers, and we thank you for taking the time out to be here, sir. And as mentioned earlier, we thank our Director, Ms. Carrie Hines. Our Director is no stranger to hurricane press conferences, and we thank you for your reassuring words and also for updating Barbadians about the readiness of the Department of Emergency Management. We want to thank our partner. We want to thank the Manager of Direct Sales and Support Services, Mrs. Donnell Belgrave-Young. Thank you for reaffirming the commitment of Sagicor to assisting and also being a partner with the Department of Emergency Management for this hurricane season. We want to thank the man with the stats, the figures, the graphs, none other than the Director of the Barbados Meteorological Services, none other than Mr. Sabu Best. Thank you for making meteorology sound so sexy. Thank you. And I'm quite sure that when you were speaking, a number of people would have tuned in, especially ladies across Barbados. We also would like to thank the members of the media who are here. We want to thank representatives for the Barbados Defense Force, representatives from the Barbados Light and Power, the Barbados Water Authority, and of course, the other members who are here. We thank you for your participation, but we are not finished just yet. That's the formal part of our press conference is over, but we have a very special unveiling that is going to happen in a few moments. We talk about partnerships. We also talk about having a presence in the community. And I want to commend Director Hines for having the vision and realizing that DEM must have a presence across Barbados. And what better way to have a presence across Barbados than to have a branded DEM Transport Board bus? Yes, you heard that? I think we deserve a round of applause for that. We thank Director Hines for agreeing and also saying, yes, this is something that is necessary, because the bus is not only beautifully branded, there's also a QR code on the bus that person can access information on multiple hazards as well as the emergency shelters list. So we think that is a very good initiative. So you can't have a branded bus and not a branded bus shelter. So ladies and gentlemen, we will also be unveiling our branded DEM bus shelter. I think we should clap for that. This bus shelter has been wrapped and developed by Antilles. They are leaders in the bus shelters across the island. This particular bus shelter has a solar panel, so those persons who are waiting to catch the bus, they can charge their phones. But also during the night and you're driving along this area, you can see a well-lit sign for DEM and the multiple hazards. So ladies and gentlemen, we continue to do our work in the community. And I want to say that we will do our best this year, as always, to ensure that the people of Barbados remain safe and remain informed on hurricane season. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aline. Okay, now we're going to board the bus shortly. The bus is going to take us around the Warrens area. Of course, we'll be making our first stop at our branded bus shelter. And once on board, we'll get out, we'll visit a few complexes, share out some informational leaflets, we use the opportunity, and then we'll come right back here to the DEM once we're finished with that. And you're all welcome to stay for lunch. All right, so we'll start with the head table, if you can. We also want our partners on this side. Members of the media, you're also invited to ride with us on the bus. Mr. Brooks, you as well.
Just time to leave the bus, right? They start back. Come right back. They come right back, but you got all over there. Stop a minute and turn back. Stop and turn back. Stop and turn back. That's right.
Everybody got the tokens?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
You want to get the buses on the road? Nah. I ain't never drive my trash or a bus, so you gonna know.
Excuse me, hi.
Yes, there is.
I did enjoy this one.
The youngsters will stand up.
All of us in for Rachel.
There's also another bus, fire service bus.
So if they can, let them go. Julia, I can remember you because some of you, so much fun.
All right, we got the fire service bus. We also have room. We also have room on the fire service bus too for those who don't want to stand up. We also have room. Hello?
Julia, I was bored.
Alright. Unfortunately, this is not a bus.
Wait, hold on. I'm looking for one now.
No.
I know.
Where's Antoine?
Alright, don't move yet, sir.